I'm your host, Chris Naugle, and welcome back to Money School Podcast, where we're going to show you how to take action, get shit done, and get off the couch and make a difference in your life. And I'm joined today with an awesome guest, and we're going to talk about habits. We're going to talk about how you can build a business that is going to succeed in this economy. And I'm going to let Brad do a better job. Brad Milford from Build Brilliance Business Systems. I think I got that right. But we're going to get into all these different things. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm super excited to be here. Let's get fired up. You already had me fired up just a minute ago. Let's talk productivity, like how to get more, how to achieve more by doing less, right? That's the real question for entrepreneurs.
I love it. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. Cause I think a big problem in today's world is, we're in the digital age. People can get knowledge everywhere. There's podcasts, there's YouTube, there's every social channel. You can go on and get little 15-second, tidbits of information on TikTok. And a lot of people actually think that that's enough. They think in 60 seconds, they should know how to do something to its finite. And if they can't, then they start to say, I don't get it. I don't understand. Where did we get off the tracks in terms of the way that we do things, the way we build habits, and just pure patience?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think there's a lot of information, so much information out there. I want to suggest we flip that script, turn down the noise and turn up the freedom. So a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, they love this freedom aspect, right? And they want to have that freedom. But so many people take these little nuggets and then go from their 9 to 5 to 24/7, right? We all know it. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit. In the last few shows, Chris, you mentioned how entrepreneurs were all looking to solve problems, right? But what I'd like to start talking about with regard to habits is what I'm suggesting is that we solve other people's problems by solving our own challenges. So I want to flip that script a little bit too.
That's definitely a flip. I'm always talking about solving other people's problems before I solve mine. So let's flip that. Let's try that. Because some people are definitely pretty self-centered. They like solving their problem before someone else's. So this script flip could play right into the way that people are thinking in today's world.
Yeah. Isn't it true that who you are is what you do? So that really comes down to habits. I mean, we could talk a little bit more ethereal, right? Thoughts lead to beliefs, beliefs lead to actions, actions lead to results. They're driven by emotions, but how much evaluation are we each doing? How much tracking of our actions? How many time audits do people do? A lot of people don't do that kind of stuff because it requires discipline. And so the question, there's a whole lot of talk out there on the internet today, podcasts everywhere. It's everywhere, right? We live in an information age. Your talk talks and your walk talks. But the question is, does your walk talk louder than your talk talks?
I don't think so for a lot of people. I got to be honest.
Yeah. So, I mean, my mission really simply, Chris, as you know, is to advance entrepreneurship. So I say all of this. I want to get people fired up, but I also say it humbly, right? I'm somewhat of a mistake expert. Look, I tested and probed through these till I found something that actually works really well with regard to habits. And I think that simple is brilliant. And a lot of times complexity, shiny objects, distractions, tangents, I mean, they're at a premium nowadays, right? With all this information out there, it's so easy to get distracted. And so if we look at opportunity costs, we all, as entrepreneurs, know what opportunity cost is, right? The lost potential gain from other possible alternatives when one opportunity is chosen over another. It's such a big thing, but often it's overlooked. And we go down these rabbit holes and we get on these tangents, even on meetings or calls. And before we know it, we haven't even achieved what we were looking to achieve. And so how do you actually turn down the noise and turn up the freedom, which is what we all desire, right? It all comes down to habits. They drive everything you do. Any thoughts about that, Chris?
Well, I totally agree. And I think habits are a big thing that a lot of people misunderstand. They think of a habit as like, the habit of biting your nails, something that you've done for a long time and you build a habit. But, habits sometimes need to be broken because we get in bad habits. But how do we go about doing that? Like, what is the process? If I'm a business owner, and some of the people listening to this are business owners, and they're developing habits out there, and, the habits are, maybe a work ethic, maybe, here's a habit that I know a lot of business owners get in. They get in the habit of working in their business. They get so caught up working in the business that they fail to work on the business. They get so caught up just wasting time throughout the day. And I'm staring at my calendar because they have no fundamental time blocking, or they have no purpose for how they allocate their time. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't value their time. They think that they're building a business, which they think that they just need to hustle and work longer and harder than everybody. And there's some truth to that. But I think in doing that, they lose focus of how valuable their time is and where their time should be spent. So let's go there. Let's talk about the habits of how we waste time as business owners.
I love it. Before we dive into what I like to call proportional priorities, because that's really what it's about. It's not about time management, it's about managing priorities, which is a big difference. Even that verbal distinction, right? Time management versus priority management will actually help focus. But before we do that, I want to talk about the benefits. Like, so many entrepreneurs talk about compressing time, right? And so there's all kinds of podcasts and things. I've even heard a few of yours where it was mentioned, like compressing time. How do you achieve more by working less? The two most common ways that are spoken about to compress time is relationships and money. Those are the two most common ways, right? You can compress time through relationships. Somebody has an expertise, or through money, paying people to do what you don't want to do. But there's two other ways that are less talked about. And that's what I want to dive in today. Those two are simplifying and stacking, right? So when we talk about habits, we want to make them simple and convenient, and we want to be able to stack those, right? So diving into those a little bit more, let's spin on the normal two, right? Relationships and money, and speak about the simplifying. You can take a complicated system, break it down, remove a few steps to simplify it, and then you compress time. Does that make sense to you so far?
Makes total sense.
Of course it does. Right. Then you can take one habit, align it with another habit, and stack it so you're doing two things at the same time. Whereas normally you wouldn't want to do two things at once. Sometimes you can. Like, for example, if you're taking your morning habits, right? Maybe you want to listen to a podcast in the morning. You can listen to your podcast, and let's say you could run or work out while you listen to your podcast. So you can stack your habits in a way where you're achieving more and less time. But to begin that process, what holds most people back is they just don't know what to do when. So I believe simple is brilliant, right? And I say that a lot, like, simple is brilliant. And it's a way where we take something that's big and huge, like, here's what I want to achieve in this year, right? Here's my strategic plan. And there's a gazillion things in there, right? But how do we actually achieve that? So if you have a goal for the year, simply break it down into quarters. You break those quarters down into months, break those months into weeks, and break those weeks into days. And this is disciplined work. I mean, the simple fact of the matter, Chris, you and I both know, even a lot of people hearing this, they're like, I'm not doing all that. That's a lot of work. And herein lies the problem. Mm-hmm. If you don't do it, see, I believe structure creates freedom. And I'm going to pause there for a moment just to let that sit in. Structure creates freedom. I speak about this a lot when it comes to productivity, when it comes to habits. If you have a structure and a substructure, like a foundation for a building, then it's easy to build upon it. And the challenge is that most people don't have a framework or a structure for their habits. And therein lies the problem. And they've never done it, and it's work that's just unfamiliar to them, right? So let's make this simple. Let's make this actionable. If simple is brilliant, let's break it down into very easy, convenient framework, right?
This is perfect timing too, because it's the beginning of the year. A lot of people just set their 2022 goals. So now reverse engineering this and showing them how to make this simple and brilliant is definitely the perfect timing for this.
So most of us have been experienced to goals. We know about SMART goals. We know about this goal, how to, OKRs and all these kinds of things. And most of us have had some exposure to that. So if you're doing that kind of work, what I suggest is once you get that goal broken down into components, then now you can chunk those into, like you said, right, time blocks, right? So most of us also know about time blocking, but how many times are people actually breaking those down into the daily small increments that they're tracking daily? So I have a tracking system and it's simple. It's before work, at work, and after work. And it's really that simple. When I started using this framework, it was a challenge. I was like, is it really that simple? No, if it doesn't matter whether you're a female Fortune 100 CEO or if you're a stay-at-home dad, those are the only 3 areas that we have in our life: before work, at work, and after work. So with that framework, I would say, what are the habits that you're actually achieving every single day, that you're tracking every single week, every single month, every single year, right? Every single quarter. And when I started doing this, it was a challenge at first. I'm not gonna fluff. I'm gonna give you no fluff, right? It took discipline, and I failed at first a few times, but now it is a framework that I use every single day. I've made it easy and I've made it convenient. So when you wake up in the morning, what are you doing? I'm not talking about brushing your teeth, man. Look, we all know the regular.
Well, we hope we all brush our teeth.
Let's hope, right? You know, we all know those kinds of things, but are you waking up? Are you reading in the morning? Are you praying in the morning? Are you running in the morning? Like, what are you doing? And not just what are you doing? Are you tracking it? I can look at my sheet, which is a simple Excel spreadsheet. I'm happy to give it to anybody that wants it. I can look at it and say, am I trending up? Am I trending down? Have I hit this 80% of the time? Now, none of us is perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. We're going to need to make adjustments. So if we want to hit a mark, right? And the goal is 80%. So am I hitting it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly? Do you actually know where you are? Do you know if your walk talks louder than your talk talks? That's the question. So once you do the work, once you take those goals and you break them down into time chunks, you literally list them in these categories and you check them off. Check, right? And it kind of goes back to, it might build upon, or it might highlight some of the work, habit that people have talked about. There's plenty of books on habits, but actionable. How actionable is it? And are you tracking it? I can literally look and say, okay, look, I missed these 3 activities this week. I'm a little bit off the mark. So next week I need to focus on those more. And that kind of structure gives me freedom. I know, Chris, it might sound a little bit weird, but when I have an incoming task, when something is actually urgent and important, let's say somebody has an issue, somebody on the team has an issue with their family, right? And they need my time, right? People first, always people first, right? And so when those things occur, I know exactly, I have the substructure and the structure to know exactly what I need to put, the opportunity cost, right? What I need to put off in order to need to focus on that thing. And I know how much adjustment needs to be made. So I can either add to my day or I can push it off until tomorrow, but it's measured and it's tracked. I'm going to pause for a second to see if you have any thoughts.
Well, no, I like it being measured. Now, going back, so as you're talking, I'm thinking about my days, right? My days are very regimented. They are literally booked sun up to sundown. You know, I don't even control my own calendars because I was dangerous controlling my calendar. So I gave that responsibility to Shauna. So we time block everything. And how we do it is there's time blocks for the most important things throughout the day. And then there's little 15-minute, sometimes half-hour long blocks. In certain parts of the week, we'll leave open spots, which aren't really open, but they're catch-ups, where then the thing I don't get done the day before, maybe I lose my voice or something isn't done, it can be fit into later in the week. But I find myself getting very frustrated on a weekly basis, sometimes a daily basis, just because I feel like there's just never enough time to get things done. I feel like, all the things I want to do, there's just never will be enough time. And I always feel like I finish my day. I want to get home and see my daughter, but there's just those couple more calls you got to make, or those couple more emails you want to push out because you don't want to leave them overnight. And how do you get your mindset into that place where you do have to just leave things? Like you said, people first, well, family first as well. And that's I'm sad to even say this, in a public podcast, but that's my struggle. I want to get home and spend time with Vivi, but I do feel torn at the end of every single day between making that other call, doing that other piece of business, or getting home, by 6 o'clock to see Vivi for a couple hours. I struggle with that. And it shouldn't be a struggle. It should just be, forget it. Nothing's more important than going home and seeing my daughter. And in my mind, I know that, but in reality, you fight that.
I'm with you 100%. And it's a really important question, Chris. I love that you asked it. I mean, the reality is the two words that I mentioned before, words are important. Sometimes labels can take away from us, but sometimes just having a label can build something up. It can reframe it for us, right? The frameworks is the key. And so when I think about your question about mindset, and you framed it as a mindset question, right? How do we detach from the business as we want to scale? It's all about speed. So how it's the two words that I used before, are proportional priorities. So what you're saying is you value your family over the growth of the business. That's just a choice that you have. They're both important, but one is weighted higher than the other. And the simple fact, I've done a lot of deep work here, Chris, and as I know you have as well with your perfect day, and you talk about it a lot, and the deep work that you've done, and understanding your principles and your values. And a lot of people don't talk about the difference between principles and values. Mm-hmm. Understanding the difference between principles and values is really a key distinction to the question that you're asking. So you have your beliefs. Your beliefs drive everything we do, right? But related to that is your principles and your values. Mm-hmm. Principles are your non-negotiables, right? These are the 7 things. These are the 4 things. These are, the X number, the N number of things, right? That are non-negotiable to me. They actually absolutely have to be achieved any day, any week, any month, any year, right? And the analogy that I use for this, because a lot of people have never been exposed to this kind of work, is if you were a conscientious objector, it's a non-negotiable, right? If you were a conscientious objector, you would not go to war no matter what. You would leave the country, you would go to jail, you would do whatever. Like, it's a non-negotiable. You're not giving it up. So defining your principles and then your values and weighting your values, like I said, I value family over a 12-hour day, right? I value family over money, these kinds of things. Having these listed out and reviewing these, see, this is part of my habits, it's part of my morning routine. I'm very familiar with my motives, my beliefs, my habits, my principles. These are things that I review every day so that when I'm inside my day, I can quickly, by looking at my roles and my goals and my motives, my needs and all that kind of stuff, I know exactly what decision to make based on those principles and values. And so once you do that kind of work, it's a little bit easier to detach from the workday and say, look, here's my habits. This is what absolutely needs to be, it's required to do on a daily basis. And then this, yes, I do value it, but it can wait a day, mm-hmm. right? It's not life-threatening.
And I read the book by Ray Dalio, Principles, and that was a very powerful book. And it was about the non-negotiables, the principles. Love it, hate it or not, these are the principles in which I live my life by. And you're right. I need to reread that book, and it's a monster of a book. But I think I read it once, going through reading it. I think I'm going to do the audiobook next. I just process books in 2 different ways. One way when I read it, one way when I listen to it. Sometimes when you listen to it, you get a lot more because the story's being told in a different sense. So I love that. No, I think that's helpful. And it's always going to be a struggle because, as your business builds and as it scales, it requires more time. And then you start taking your time and you start using it in the best places that you feel fit. But principles could guide those different decisions on how you do things.
100%. And I think, look, as entrepreneurs, the deep work, right? You can go within or you go without, is what I like to say. And the deep work really is what drives us. So a lot of people talk about purpose. I think purpose is nested. We have lots of purposes. We have the bigger purposes. We have our internal purpose. We have our driving force, our chief aim. Like, there's all these, I don't want to get it. That's a long conversation. Happy to come back on another podcast and talk about that. But it gets convoluted. I do believe we all need a purpose. We need a driver, right? What is our core motive? But being clear in these things, so few entrepreneurs actually dive into these things that drive us every day. So the question you were asking about mindset, how do I detach or when do I detach? It all really comes down to what's driving us daily. And so I encourage people to go within or struggle for and fight for that freedom every single day. Again, you can use frameworks or you can use the hard work. The reality is, again, let's make this simple, right? Because I really want to give your audience like some actionable information.
Sure.
And the truth is, it really is simple. Either your behaviors are constructive or they're destructive. Every single one of them, every behavior, every action that you take every single day is either constructive or destructive. And you get to decide, not you, Chris, but just you in general in this case, you get to decide if they're constructive or destructive. And you need to pause and evaluate those things on a regular basis. Again, I'm going to go back. I know I'm a little bit like a bulldog on this, but daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. And so few entrepreneurs are actually taking the action to pause and evaluate those actions, those stepping stones. Okay, I just leaped to a new thing, right? I'm willing to take risks. I'm going to leap to a new thing. But are you pausing? Are you evaluating that thing? Are you getting input from your team? Are you getting input from your clients, your customers, these kinds of things? Or are you just driving forward with these ideas thinking that your ladder's leaning on the right wall? And then 10 years later, you come to find that it's not. So I would encourage you to pause and look at your actual actions on a daily basis, your habits on a daily basis, break those down, track them, and ask yourself weekly. When I do my week planning, I say, hey, were the majority of those actions constructive? Or were a few of them destructive? And being fully humble and honest, I have destructive actions just like anybody else on the planet, right? But I like to pause and evaluate those. And that has really been effective. Speaking of effective and breaking things down, I want to offer one more. Actions are also either effective or ineffective. Let's make this really simple. That's it. When it comes to business, either the actions you're taking, the habits that you're using, the behaviors that you're using to influence the people around you, they're either effective or ineffective. How often have you paused, again, to track those daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, right? And so it really is that simple. Again, like a bulldog, there's just so few entrepreneurs who are disciplined enough or have been trained enough, right? It might not be a case of, I don't want to do it or I'm unwilling to do it, or maybe just haven't had exposure to the benefits of actually doing the work.
Yeah, no, I think we all struggle with that. And, especially in today's world, it's an interesting time. It's a time where I think, my late friend, Stefan Aarnio, wrote a book, Hard Times Create Strong Men. And I look back to my grandparents and my great grandparents, going way back, they were strong men, and my grandma, very strong woman, but they grew up in hard times. They didn't grow up in times like what we're in today, where some could argue are hard, but these aren't hard times. These have been good times. These have been easy times. Everything's pretty much been laid out for you in a roundabout way. Yes, you've fallen on your face a couple of times. Great. That's called failing and learning. But the biggest thing I see today is we're talking about action, people taking action. People just want to be entertained today. I feel like so few people actually do anything with the knowledge that they get, with the actions, the actions they're taking are going on social media and just scrolling as fast as they can to find something that entertains them. Yes, maybe they're learning, but are they really applying that knowledge to something that that action makes a difference in moving the needle? I think a lot of people today are either not looking out the windshield at all or staring in the rearview mirror. The markets have been really good. Stocks have been up. Crypto's been up. Everything, all the assets that they have been going up. Welcome to the economic cycle, folks. This is how it always works. This is called expansion. And what is next, you're not going to like. But people don't look out the front windshield to see what's coming. They're constantly looking in the rearview mirror. They're looking in the rear view of how I did last year, how my investments performed, how my business did. Oh, my business did so well last year. Of course it did. You just came out of COVID where people were locked up for how long? Actually, some parts of the country, like my state, people are still locked up like caged animals, but that's a whole different topic. So businesses, depending on what you're measuring it on, of course they're doing good. They're doing great compared to when we were shut down. So when you look in the rear view mirror, you're looking in the wrong mirror. You got to look at the front windshield, and you got to determine what is coming next. How do I plan for it? What actions do I have to take that are going to matter to set me or you, okay, all of you listening, set you up, set your family up, set your future grandchildren's up, children up, so that they can enjoy a financial freedom you've never even been able to dream about. And it just takes planning, and it takes habits and actionable steps. But I just think too many people are just so caught up in, well, I got some extra time, I got a spot in my calendar. They just burn their time in entertainment. Like, how do we break these bad habits we're creating today and start focusing on actionable steps that make a difference? And how do we even know what that difference is? And how do we even know what those action steps are? Lots to unpack there. Sorry.
No, I love that. This conversation, I mean, it all comes down to action, right? And then there's this philosophy, man. I think people are confused. There's so much information out there. Oh, we got to take massive action. Okay, that's one philosophy, and that works for some. We got to take these big risks. Okay, the big risks, all right, that works for some, but not for everybody. Everybody's different. What I have found, and I am a risk taker. I am an adventurer like yourself. I'm like, cool action sports and get out there and, movement and all that. Some of us are like that, but some of us aren't. And so I think you need to test what works for you. Sometimes it is a big leap, but sometimes it's really just slowing down and saying, you know what is a simple action that I'm taking today? I really believe that success is made up by the simple, small actions taken every single day and enjoying those actions, because there's not some destination called success. Success is a state of mind. So I think the key to taking action is, number one, let's get some real practical stuff, right? Number one, the hardest thing to do is to get started in anything. Would you agree, Chris?
100%.
This is the hardest thing is getting started.
That leap, that first leap is the hardest thing.
So I'm going to talk about a simple framework on how to do that. I use a framework for that, right? And for myself and my team, and it's really powerful and it's simple. I think simple is brilliant. But the first step is really taking a sober look. Yes, I said a sober look at what's getting in your way. Look, you can get a coach or consultant. And again, there's a lot of people talk out there, and that's a great way. Look, I'm a coach and a consultant, so I'm not taking away from that, but you can do this yourself. Take a sober look at what's getting your way. How many times are you distracted by shiny objects and complexities and tangents and distractions every single day? Get a piece of paper out or get your computer notebook or whatever it is and ask yourself, what is getting in the way of my days? Again, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, right? But just start out, keep it simple. Daily, what kind of patterns? I'm a pattern guy, Chris, you know this. What kind of patterns am I seeing every day? Am I hopping onto social media and spending 2 hours there scrolling through feeds? Is that constructive or destructive? Is it effective? Is it ineffective, right? What's the best use of my time? I use a system that I've been tracking now for a long time. It's a simple Google form, right? So anybody can do this, right? Anybody uses Google or any kind of forms, and just list a number of questions out. And I call it my wins, it's my tracker, right? My actions tracker. So halfway through the day, I jump in. It's only 10 questions long, and it basically says, what's the best use of my time? What should I be working on now? What shouldn't I be working on now? What do I need to start doing? What do I need to stop doing? And by doing this every day, sometimes it is a little redundant, because I find over the course of 1 or 2, 3 days, I end up putting the same thing in. But when I review that, when I evaluate that at the end of the week, it gives me large amounts of clarity where I can say, wow, Brad, you've been in a pattern of doing, X, Y, and Z throughout the week, and you haven't hit these habits, and you need to focus, but yeah, you're not doing it. So how do I solve that, right? We're all human. We all struggle with these kinds of things. What tools are you using to break that and to actually take these actions every single day on proportional priorities? What's most important, right? It's not about time. It's about priority. So
I like that.
I promise to give it a little framework. This is a little bit silly. I usually do like a a little small, like 4 PowerPoint presentations, but this is something that anybody listening can understand. I call this D2B2. All right. So this is a framework that I use to break what is really difficult for a lot of people, and that is getting started. Like, this has been powerful for corporate. It's been powerful for entrepreneurs. It's been powerful in my team, other teams. And so D2B2, not to be confused with R2D2, but it's dirty dog, beautiful, brilliant. This is a framework that I use with my team. And so I usually show a picture of a dog. Okay. So that's dirty, right? These are 4 stages. This is basically taking Scrum and making it silly and easy for the team to understand. The hardest part is getting started. So I've shown this picture of a dog and it's caked in mud. It's like black with soot. Like, you can't even tell it's a dog, right? It's just super, super dirty. That's the first stage. When we start any task, whether it be habits, breaking down habits like before work, at work, after work, we just need a dirty version. We need to slap some things on paper and just get started. Maybe it's, I have to build a website. So you have this big, huge project, you got like 8 pages to do. Like, how do we get started? You just simply slap it on paper. Here's the 8 pages. You create a framework, right? It's dirty. It's messy. You might not even have it right at first. It doesn't matter. It's the dirty version. So just if you've got 40% of the information, slap the thing down on paper and get started. So that's the dirty phase, right? Then I show a slide of a dirty dog, beautiful, brilliant, D2B2, right? So then I show a picture of the dog and it's cleaned up a little bit. He's rolled him through a puddle of water, right? So now he's a little bit clean. So he's a little bit cleaner. So you can see now through my illustration that the next stage is just clean up what you started with. You got 40%, get to the 50% or 60% mark, right? Just clean up what you started with. You got your table of contents, add to it a little bit, right? So that's the dog stage. Now you can tell it's a dog. It doesn't look like a cake of mud, right? The next stage is you still wouldn't let that dog in the house. There's no way. I should be talking about cats, Chris. I'm sorry.
For me, yeah, but cats are pretty clean critters. They don't get dirty. So a dirty cat would definitely not work.
That's true. I was just thinking about that, though. To speak to you, I should probably be talking cats. And anyhow, I
don't know where that lazy bugger is. We got our lazy shop cat. His name's Lazy Cash. He's around here somewhere.
So you got dirty. Now you got dog, right? You fix it up a little bit. The next is it's dirty dog, beautiful. Now you want to beautify it. You take it to the salon, right? Because you're not letting that dog in the house still caked with mud and rolling in mud puddles. And so you take it to the salon, they put a bow on it, they pretty it up. Now, whatever you're working on, and the way I illustrate this is now it's client ready, right? So we take something that's dirty, we fix it up a little bit, and then we make it client ready. It's still not perfect. Shooting for perfection is a miss, right?
Yeah.
And that's what holds so many people back, is that perfectionism. Same thing with habits. This is exactly how I built my habits. At first, they were dirty. Then I tested them. I fixed them up a little bit. I said, this isn't working. I adjusted them so where they actually do work. And I do have the freedom that I desire. So I'm not, struggling for freedom. Then I fixed it up. I tested it. Now I made it client ready. I'm like, hey, will this actually work for a client? And I tested a few clients, did some focus groups. Hey, does this work for you? Right. And so now you have a client ready, but there's still another stage. And this is a stage where a lot of people don't go the extra mile. There's still a lot of room on the extra mile, right, Chris? Mm-hmm. So the last stage is brilliant. And so my company is sort of based on this notion. It's all about, the automations, the integrations, the fixing it after it's client ready. How do you optimize? How do you maximize, right? I have one of my principles is rallying toward excellence, right? But it doesn't happen in a day. It comes through frameworks. And so optimizing those things, maximizing those things, retesting, going back to your clients, going back, using some story pulling. Hey, does this work? Does this test? Really like connecting with your clients to see if what you're doing is actually working. That's where that's where things become brilliant. That's where things really start to work. So hopefully this framework, for anybody listening, you can use this simple D2B2, dirty dog, beautiful, brilliant. It's, call it Scrum if you want, but it's really simple. And it just takes the difficulty out of just getting started. Just make a dirty version.
And I like that because I think you're right. And I see it a lot in what I do. Everybody, so many people, I shouldn't say everybody, but so many people out there want perfection. They want to know everything there is to know about something before they take action on it. No, I can't do anything until I'm still researching that. I'm still learning about it. Hey, it's great to do your research, great to do your due diligence. But if that is what stands in the way from you taking action, you're hurting yourself and everybody else that you could be helping. And I'm very visual in the way that I think. And I think if you follow my stuff, you'll see that. But, I watch movies over and over when I find one that really has a visual appeal. And Social Network, if you remember that Mark Zuckerberg story about Facebook, in that, the biggest scenes that I relate to and I'm using right now in my own business is the part where he's in his dorm room. He came up with the idea of the Facebook and he starts mapping it out throughout his entire dorm room. And there's a scene where they show a whole bunch of whiteboards and they're a mess. His whole dorm room is a disaster. It's got whiteboards everywhere, writing on all the windows, probably writing on the mirrors everywhere. It's just a disaster. That's your dirty dog. But that was where he was getting the framework put together for what Facebook would look like. So what we're doing here is we're designing Private Money Club, which is our new community for lenders and for borrowers. And we're doing the same thing. We're whiteboarding it. And my boardroom office is a disaster. But you know what? If someone walked in and is like, wow, what happened in here? I'm just going to say, what do you think? It's the framework for something that will eventually be beautiful and brilliant. But the process of getting there starts with just getting it on paper, making it messy. It's not going to be pretty. And the one thing that I've always been really good at, maybe I just, was blessed to have this trait, is I take action sometimes too soon. So, I'll launch something and then I'll just kind of work through and make it, and sometimes that requires me starting over again, but that's okay. And I think that some people just couldn't do that. That's just how I operate, because that's how I learn. Doing it, failing, seeing what doesn't work, start over and do it again. But this framework thing that from the Social Network of how he did that is kind of what you were talking about. That was the dirty dog. And then, after that, it's client ready after it kind of becomes beautiful. And then brilliance is just where you're tweaking it. And if anyone thinks anything's ever going to be perfect, you're completely wrong. I don't even know if there is perfection. Maybe, your child, that's perfection, in your eyes, that's the closest thing. But I don't know if perfection exists in a business world. Facebook's not perfected. Nothing's perfected. There's no business that has perfected anything, because once you perfect something, you technically in your mind, you have arrived. Then where is there to go? Back down to the bottom. You can't hit perfection because you can't arrive. Every time you arrive, you should raise the bar and start making it better. There's always a way to improve. So, that's kind of what first came to my mind when you mentioned that. It's just that scene from Social Network where his dorm room was a complete disaster, beer bottles everywhere, and just the framework.
I love that analogy. I'm like you. So I was that guy. But the movie that comes to mind is A Beautiful Mind for me.
Oh, I love that.
Where it's too. The same kind of illustration that you described. I went through that phase. I think as entrepreneurs, many of us go through that phase, but then it's breaking that down and then simplifying that. And again, I don't want to use the word perfection because it's not. It's progress over perfection, right? It's failing forward. That's really what you said, right? Fail fast, falling forward is what I like to say, Chris. And
I like that.
That's the way. That is the way forward. The obstacle is the way. It's a great book, right? And the obstacle is the way. And we just need to fail through it, identify it, test it, right? And then just keep going. All these things that hold people back, like you're a money guy. So 5-year financial projections or department budgets or project cost forms or schedule of values and all these things, right? A lot of them hold back departments or hold back CEOs or department heads or all these people because they're just not getting started. Just make a dirty version and then plow through it. So.
I got to say something real quick because, people on all podcasts, they're looking for one place to start. Well, the obstacle is the way. It's a book. And you just mentioned that. I'm just going to put it in front of the camera so everybody can kind of see that. It's this one right here. It's a must read. So The Obstacle is the Way. And who is the author? Ryan. Oh, it's Ryan Holiday. That's right. I should have known that. So Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. If you want a good book, that's the book. Read it and take action on what you read. Sorry, I didn't mean to break you off, but people are always just looking for that one good book. And you brought it up. I'm like, I can't leave this opportunity to tell people about a wonderful book. I got to reread that book. It was many years that I read that book.
Yeah, I love that book. It's a great book. I think when it comes down out, so look, for many years, I was in the recreation industry. So what I did, where I got my bones, or where I made my bones, or whatever you want to call it, right? Growing up for 15 years, I was in the recreation industry, and I learned a couple of things. I never expected to be in a construction field, and eventually became an owner, but I labored first. And what I learned, some of the things there's many things I learned, but some of the things I learned is you just got to break things down. Like, so I built stadiums and playgrounds and tennis courts and all these things. For 15 years, I was known as an expert in that field. I mean, that's where I came to in the end. But what I learned was it's about not cutting corners, right? It's about getting started in the right way. If I would have just imagine a stadium, right? Like a football field, soccer field, whatever it is, a rodeo. And imagine all the parts and pieces and rivets and nuts and bolts. And if I were to just pull that stuff off the truck as it came in and just put it anywhere, I'd have a mess, right? It'd be a dirty, but at least I would have the parts. Then you have to organize those parts. You have to, hopefully, you know where they go and you do that as they come off the truck. But if you don't, that's okay. You can still fix it up. You begin to organize. Hey, what goes down first? I got to pour the concrete first. Here are the L bolts for that. Like, or J bolts or whatever. Like, and then I got to bolt the steel onto the concrete. Like, that's going to give me the foundation that I need to be able to build on top, right? If you don't know how to build an erector set, you can still figure it out along the way, but you need to begin dirty and then start to organize. And so it's not something that anybody should fear. That's my belief. You just got to get in there, get your hands dirty, and get some shit done, like you said.
Yeah, got to take action. It's not the knowledge that's going to get you there. It's the action it's the actionable steps that you take using the knowledge that you get. And you've got a whole bunch of that today, folks. You got a bunch of knowledge, a bunch of steps, a bunch of first places that you can go, and a whole bunch of stuff. Now, get off your ass and do something with this stuff. Stop wasting your time just listening and actually take action. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of wrap this thing up. What would be a great way for people to learn more about what you and your company do, and how can they kind of get around that campfire?
Yeah, I love that. So I'm on all the primary channels. That's probably the easiest way. Go to any of them, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever your preference is. I'm there, Brad A. Milford, on all channels. That's probably the easiest way. But if you're feeling froggy, right? Some people feel froggy sometimes. If you're feeling froggy, go to my website, because there's a bunch of tools and things. I'm always working on that. Look, it's not perfect. It's just not. But it's a work in progress. I'm getting to the brilliant stage with that. I use that humorously, right? But it's a work like anything. I would encourage people to go buildbrilliance.net. And probably one of the best places to go is bypass the homepage and all that, because go to resources, right? There's a bunch of like ebooks and tools that you can use, or shoot me a message, and I'm happy to actually, I believe in serving. I know you do too. This is why we connect so well, Chris. Look, if you're interested in this whole habit thing and you want the framework that I have, the before work, at work, after work, all that, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to give it to you. Like, it's all about service for me. So whatever is going to get you off the fence and get you started, just take an action today.
All right, folks. Well, you heard it best right there. So take some action, go out, get the resources from his website. We'll put the link right in the description, whether it's up or down, depending on the device you're on. But this is the framework you need. You need to start building habits. As he was talking, I'm thinking about all the things that I do, and a lot of them were the steps that you were teaching them. You're talking about different reminders and building habits. Like I literally in my phone have like my little notepad or my task thing. And then right there, it's just got all my tasks. And they're just daily reminders so that I don't get so busy that I forget to do the things that I'm trying to build as habits. And these are very simple things. But the simple things in life matter. And that's what you all need to focus with, the first step. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this. We'll put the links in the bio, and you guys can check them out and get yourself going, because it's 2022, folks. It's time to take action. You don't know what's coming, but you better start planning for it. So get off the couch. Stop scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, and go out there and do something productive that moves the needle for yourself, your family, and your family's family. And this will be a good year. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate everything. And thank you to all of our listeners. We'll see you on the next one.